policy and the economy as we know it today. Project 2025 is authored by almost 24 former Trump White House staffers and Trump administration officials. It was compiled.
Let me see if we're live. All right, welcome back, everybody. If you are watching this on YouTube, welcome back. If it's not your first stream, welcome. If this is your first time around, quick reminders. Early bird ticket sales end July 14th. You have 4 days left to secure your tickets to the FX Summit 2024 conference. It's going to be in Dubai, November 20th to the 22nd. All traders, investors in crypto, make sure to grab your tickets before they're sold out. fxsummit2024.com. Link is in the description. Also, I'll be showing you a strategy on the stream while we're live trading. If you're interested in joining the ranks of all the successful traders on the Chart Addicts team, learning a strategy that you can trust, can use to make money for the rest of the year, chartaddictsfx.com. Head over to live classes. Time is also running out. We have July 21st is that next masterclass. So hopefully see you all there. We're going to be going through Jerome Powell's testimony in front of the House Banking or the House Financial Services Committee. He's giving a semi-annual monetary policy report. Just did the same thing yesterday in front of the Senate and today in front of the House. All right. Make sure to hit a like if you guys are on the stream and is YouTube even live. Shows were live. Okay, well, good enough.
Way inflation and increased interest rates necessary to confront it.
I won't be talking as much today. I'm going to let this thing run, and I'll be trading silently. If you have questions, put them up in the chats, and yeah.
Continue to hammer Americans, and especially those living paycheck to paycheck. Workers and families feel the pain, making everyday purchases at high prices in the grocery aisles and at the pump. They have suffered years of eroding purchasing power in their paychecks under the Biden administration's economic mismanagement. Heightened mortgage rates make it prohibitive for new home buyers to reach the American dream of a starter home for their family. I am pleased in getting inflation under control. I am pleased that you have committed to an apolitical approach to this. I am not pleased by the Fed's opaque, unjustified, politicized, and underanalyzed regulatory proposals, which will ultimately hurt all Americans. We need to know where the Fed is going on its fundamentally flawed Basel III endgame proposal and its opaque regulatory approach. I yield.
Well, Chair now recognizes the ranking member of the Financial Institutions and Monetary Policy Subcommittee, Mr. Foster, for 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair McHenry and Ranking Member Waters. I'd like to also thank you, Chair Powell, for joining us today and for the role you have played in combating inflation and supporting a stable economic recovery. While the presidency is often the focus of political pronouncements about macroeconomic conditions, there's no question that that undersells the importance and the independence of the work of the Federal Reserve Board. While actions taken by the President and Congress certainly play a significant role, monetary policy decisions made by an independent Federal Reserve are the big dog in shaping macroeconomic conditions that shape economic outcomes for millions of Americans. And work continues on inflation, but significant progress has been made to bring the country in line with the Fed's 2% target. The good news is that macroeconomic policy is working as designed. Well-calibrated monetary policy with fiscal support from the American Rescue Plan, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act has powered strong job creation and low unemployment while staving off a recession that many thought inevitable. And far better, I should point out, than our
Put a 1 in the chat if you guys would prefer I do live fact checking and just kind of go through in real time, or just 2, take notes. We'll do it at the end and we'll just sit here and live trade.
Chair Powell, you'll be recognized for 5 minutes to give an oral presentation or testimony. Without objection, your written statement will be made a part of the record. You're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman McHenry, Ranking Member Waters, and other members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to present the Federal Reserve's semi-annual monetary policy report. The Federal Reserve remains squarely focused on our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people.
Another reminder, if you guys were a part of that Puerto Rico event, check your emails. Everybody got either a free ticket if you attended in person, and you guys also got a 50% off code. So we're doing these events all over the world, sponsored by the FX Summit. And so if you guys were at the Puerto Rico event or the event in Los Angeles a few days ago, Make sure to check your emails. You're all getting something very special.
Pace. Gross domestic product growth appears to have moderated in the first half of this year, following impressive strength in the second half of last year. Private domestic demand remains robust, however, with slower but still solid increases in consumer spending. We've also seen moderate growth in capital spending and a pickup in residential investment so far this year. Improving supply conditions have supported resilient demand and the strong performance of the U.S. economy over the past year. In the labor market, a broad set of indicators suggests that conditions have returned to about where they stood on the eve of the pandemic, strong but not overheated. The unemployment rate has moved higher, but was still at a low level of 4.1% in June. Payroll job gains averaged 222,000 jobs per month in the first half of the year. Strong job creation over the past couple of years has been accompanied by an increase in the supply of workers, reflecting increases in labor force participation among individuals aged 25 to 54 and a strong pace of immigration. As a result, the jobs to workers gap is well down from its peak and now stands just a bit above its 2019 level. Nominal wage growth has eased over the past year. The strong labor market has helped narrow long-standing disparities in employment and earnings across demographic groups. Inflation has eased notably over the past couple of years, but remains above the committee's longer-run goal of 2%. Total PCE prices rose 2.6% over the 12 months ending in May. Core PCE prices, which exclude the volatile food and energy categories, also increased 2.6%. After a lack of progress toward our 2% inflation objective in the early part of this year, the most recent monthly readings have shown modest further progress. Longer-term inflation expectations appear to remain well anchored, as reflected in a broad range of surveys of households, businesses, and forecasters, as well as measures from financial markets. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. In support of these goals, the committee has maintained the target range for the federal funds rate at 5.25% to 5.5% since last July, after having tightened the stance of monetary policy significantly over the previous year and a half. We've also continued to reduce our securities holdings. At our May meeting, we decided to slow the pace of balance sheet runoff starting in June, consistent with the plans released previously. Our restrictive monetary policy stance is helping to bring.
Look at the chart. Put a 1 if we're clear. Put a 2 if you don't get it.
The committee has stated that we do not expect it will be appropriate to reduce the target range for the federal funds rate until we have gained greater confidence that inflation is moving sustainably toward 2%. Incoming data for the first quarter of this year did not support such greater confidence. The most recent inflation readings, however, have shown some modest further progress, and more good data would strengthen our confidence that inflation is moving sustainably toward 2%. We continue to make decisions meeting by meeting. We know that reducing policy restraint too soon or too much could stall or even reverse the progress that we've seen on inflation. At the same time, in light of the progress made both in lowering inflation and in cooling the labor market over the past 2 years, elevated inflation is not the only risk we face. Reducing policy restraint too late or too little could unduly weaken economic activity and employment. In considering adjustments to the target range for the federal funds rate, the committee will continue its practice of carefully assessing incoming data and their implications for the evolving outlook, the balance of risks, and the appropriate path of monetary policy. Congress has entrusted the Fed with the operational independence that is needed to take a longer-term perspective in the pursuit of our dual mandate of maximum employment and price stability. We remain committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Restoring price stability is essential to achieving maximum employment and stable prices over the long run. Our success in delivering on those goals matters to all Americans. I'll conclude by emphasizing that we understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you, Chair Powell. I'll now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Chair Powell, let's begin with this question of the Basel III endgame. I know you got questions about it yesterday, but I think we need further clarity. Your testimony about Vice Chair Barr's discussions with the FDIC and with the OCC on the next steps for the Basel III endgame. You mentioned potential changes have been made to the original Basel III endgame, that a lot of progress has been made, and that the board is very close to agreeing on the substance of those changes. But the next steps, that's really what I want to get into. Let's get through the mechanics of what happens next. If the Fed, the OCC, and the FDIC agree on the substance of whatever changes you're going to make, what happens then? Like, walk through the mechanics as you anticipated.
Okay. So we're very close to having exactly that agreement on the substance of the proposed changes pursuant to those talks. The next question then is how to proceed. And, it is my view and the strong view of a number of board members that the appropriate thing to do is to take that new proposal and publish it along with the effects of the quantitative impact survey and put that out for comment again and receive comment on that, and then take some time to review those comments before finalizing the regulation. And that's a discussion we're having with the other two agencies now. We have not been able to reach agreement on a path to do that. But that's something that we think is the right way to do. That's what we've done in similar situations. There aren't that many similar situations, but when we see broad and material changes to an important regulation, we think let's go out again and give all the commenters another chance to comment.
Yeah, and that also avoids serious lawsuit risk and the risk that Congress step in and overturn this rulemaking using the Congressional Review Act. I think the other agencies here, if they're not agreeing with the Fed, they're running against the independence of the Federal Reserve here. This is not a trifling matter of policy. This is a matter of real substance for the independence of the Fed and rulemaking at the Federal Reserve, which I think we should be able to keep the independence of the Fed separate, especially in this political environment. But opening up to a new comment period. So that means you have to get consensus for the Board of Governors on the policy.
Fellas, and ladies, never trust a man that wears a bow tie to a tie event and has an Apple Watch. One or the other is a red flag. Both, not a single word he's saying.
With the Fed on a matter of serious policy, especially with a chair of the FDIC is being ousted by his own party as soon as they can get a replacement confirmed. It's an absurd thing that the Fed has to go to an acting comptroller.
Good question, Manny. Go down to the 15-minute time frame to find the body of the lows. You're using body to wick, but you're using it on the higher time frames. Go down one or two time frames, and you'll see how I got it. But make sure you come back and confirm once you do that. Let me see if you got it right.
Surcharge.
And if you're a real one, send the link to your trading view chart in the comment section.
Of impact analysis.
It'll be this proposal, which does include changes to the GSIP surcharge, but does not include the stress tests.
Okay. But the goal here with the quantitative impact is to actually measure the impact of these rules as enacted, right? Based upon what is existing regulatory structures. Okay.
That's right.
All right. So let's get into the question of balance sheet as quickly as we can. 2.5 years ago, you stated, quote, the committee intends to slow and then stop the decline in the size of the balance sheet when reserve balances are somewhat above the level it judges to be consistent with ample reserves. That's 2.5 years ago. Where are we in this question of what are ample reserves?
Well, so the balance sheet,
what a question. They're not sparing shit today.
$1.7 trillion so far. So we've made quite a lot of progress. We think we have a good ways to go. And as I mentioned, and as you just mentioned, we've now slowed the pace really with a view to getting as far as we can without creating frictions and disruption that might cause us to prematurely stop shrinking. Going a little bit slower might actually enable us to go further. We think we have quite a ways to go. It's very hard to be precise about it. It's really a question of supply and demand. And we will find that level with a little bit of a buffer on top of it. And that's where we'll stop.
All right. Thank you for your testimony. The ranking member, Ms. Waters, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Chairman Powell, are you familiar with Project 2025?
Not really, no.
You've heard about it?
I really don't focus on these things at all. I
You
mean,
don't focus, but you know there's something known as a Project 2025? The reason I'm asking you is because one proposal is to get rid of the Fed's dual mandate to promote only stable prices, but also maximum employment. This is your mandate. These are mandates, right? This is what you do. Is that
yes,
right?
we do serve a dual mandate. That's right.
And so if there was anything that would get rid of the mandate, what would it do to our,
Bro, is she good? Or is it just me?
The
No, it's not just me. What the fuck am I even asking that question for? Bro, is she good?
it has served us well. This is something Congress can change and change back to a single mandate. There are
what do
others.
you do to get maximum?
Is this making anyone else uncomfortable? She's sauced. I was this sauced 2 days ago. I was struggling to get up the stairs on God himself. My eyes looked the same way. There was nobody home, right? The lights were on, but there was nobody home. You guys know what that? You guys know what that's saying? That's that. What should you ask about the dude? He said, I have no idea what the fuck you are talking about. And she was like, perfect. I'm gonna ask you about it. What the fuck are we doing?
Of course, I understand. You may not have seen, heard, or read Project 2025. Are you familiar with a effort in the country?
Good stuff, Manny. Sometimes that little adjustment, bro. When in doubt, zoom out. But also, when you're trying to find the body to wick, sometimes you gotta get a little surgical. You understand? He said, I want to take the NAS 100 class. I don't know. The Web 50 expires. LOL. I'll see you later today. See me later today. Where, Camille? But anyways, the webinar 50 and NAS 50 are still active, I think. If you were on that last webinar, but
Getting
we'll see.
rid of diversity and inclusion.
Oh, today's 15. Or I mean, sorry, today's Wednesday. We're having free webinar today, but maybe we'll cancel that one. Take the masterclass, y'all. Stop fucking around.
So I was spent most of my career in the private sector. What I observed was really successful institutions in the United States, companies, organizations generally, are those that do a really good job on diversity and get the best out of people and attract a broad, diverse range of talents to the table, and people feel comfortable speaking. So that's the way we feel about it at the Fed, and that's what we've been doing and will continue to do.
And do you think it's important not only to have diversity and inclusion
God,
Um,
Jesus.
in the
Sorry.
public sector, but in the private sector?
First, I want to publicly apologize for using God's name in vain. But if there was any time to just get, why are we still talking about diversity and inclusion? The country's falling apart. All right, we played that shit. We had a little fun. Oh, everyone should get a ball. Why are you trying to take the ball from each other in the soccer match? Like, everyone should get a ball. Okay, we had the little fun. The ship is sinking. Shut the fuck up before we lose the country. The fuck are we asking the Federal Reserve Chairman about diversity and inclusion? Bro, this is why we're 6 trillion in debt. This is why China's going to take Taiwan. This is why we have a literacy rate in America going down the drain. This is why we have an inflation crisis with most Americans not having a single piece of savings. This is who's running the country. The fuck are we talking about diversity and inclusion? How about you include some common sense in this conversation? How about we diversify the amount of people so we have less retarded people running the country? Maybe we should diversify between, yes, some mentally deluded group of people that obviously for some reason we have to have up here. And then let's just fucking diversify it. Let's include 1 or 2 people with common sense. Nothing? That's diversity and how about we include some common sense?
Question, if you talk to CEOs, they get this. If you want to attract the best talent in our country now, you need to be committed to these things.
And so I would like to compliment you on the job that you've been doing. I'd like to compliment you on keeping us informed about inflation. Not only do I welcome you here today, I look forward to working with you for years to come. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you.
In his head, he said, I fucking hope not, because I hope Trump gets me the hell out of here. Guys, keep in mind, Powell wanted to leave. Biden dragged him back in. The president calls you and said, we need you to serve your country. You ain't saying no. And it's not because you want to be the Fed chairman during this inflation crisis. It's because Powell was forced into it. He said, I look forward to working with you for years to come. I hope not. And I know for a fact he doesn't hope to be here past 4 months.
The gentleman from Arkansas, the vice chair of the full committee.
View, I think, is that right?
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the results of the quantitative impact study and the separate comment period, as well as an interagency agreement you referenced yesterday. Because of Dodd-Frank's role and the vice chair for supervision, Vice Chairman Barr's role and the Fed's role, would it be fair to say the Fed is a first among equals on proposing a rule like this? In other words, does the Fed have a supremacy position on determining whether it should be fully reproposed or not, or do you view it strictly as a collaborative basis? Just curious in your view on that.
I would say it's strictly collaborative, and I would say that our discussions with the FDIC, which Vice Chair Barr has actually been conducting, and the OCC, they've been very productive so far. So I want to make sure to say that we've continued to work our way through this, and I believe we will get fairly soon to a resolution of the remaining process issue.
Good. Well, let me turn from that subject to the court's recent decision to overturn the so-called Chevron doctrine. Many of us believe this was the first step to reining in decades, literally, of an unprecedented, uncontrolled growth in the administrative state. And so I think all of us on at least this side of the aisle are certainly saying to the Federal Reserve and other federal agencies in our jurisdiction that we want to reassert Article I authority over the direction that independent agencies work. Would it be fair to ask you to certify that because of this change in Chevron, that the Fed would commit to promulgating new rules only if they're at the direction of an explicit congressional authorization?
So I think, first of all, we're studying that and several other decisions that have just come down.
By the way, this is actually one of the most important and consequential things that's been talked about. Funny enough, or not funny enough. The independence of the Fed is crucial, number one, because you guys know there's a giant game happening in the background with the people in charge, and whoever's closest to the money printer gets to take advantage of, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say the whole thing. I'm not going to get the channel taken down. But there's a lot of reasons for the Fed to maintain its independence, because Congress is going to force them. They're either going to weaponize the Fed, just like Congress does with everything, because they don't seem to understand, the sanctity of the separation between the different branches, because obviously Congress people are usually just power hungry, soulless hacks. So they're trying to take control of the Fed. On one hand, I actually would appreciate that, because we should not have extra governmental agencies running the world's strongest currency. That makes no sense. They should be at the behest of a congressional vote, which means if anything consequential needs to happen, you gotta vote on it. But the reality is, none of us trust Congress to fucking, I don't know, to vote for what we're gonna have for lunch. Like, I wouldn't trust Congress to fucking do anything. Okay, I wouldn't trust them to vote for a fucking. Never mind, too far. So long story short, in theory, yes, because these independent agencies are beholden to elected officials, it's kind of a good thing, because we don't elect Jerome Powell. So how is this one guy that nobody elected running the world? No one likes that. But do we trust Congress, especially this current Congress? We just saw Maxine Waters' question about DEI. Like, is that the kind of, are those the people that should be in charge of the Fed's mandates? No, fuck no. So it's a pretty big deal here.
The last week or two. So I haven't got anything definitive for you on that. I think you know us to be an organization. I know us to be an organization that is strongly committed to the rule of law. Supreme Court says what the law is. We'll always do what we believe the law is.
Well, I'll submit that question maybe in more detail in writing, and maybe you'll have a chance to reflect on that. Back in February, you were on 60 Minutes and you said the U.S. budget deficit, the national debt are unsustainable. Do you still view that the U.S. is on an unsustainable fiscal path?
No shit.
I do. I think I tried to be clear that the level of the U.S. debt is not itself unsustainable, but the path that we're on is unsustainable. And I think that is not controversial.
I think many of us certainly agree with that. And we know that when the deficit's at 3 times the economic growth rate and growing, it's of concern. and it's contributed to inflation. Just 3 years ago in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, you gave
Let me promise you guys, he's either going to try to blame this on Biden and try to get Powell to say something about Bidenomics, or he's going to try and blame the Fed for this inflation, even though Congress printed the money.
some humility.
Yeah, he did this.
Some on this side of the aisle particularly think it made inflation worse. Your August 2020 Jackson Hole speech, you said the flexible average inflation targeting framework regarding 2%, that you would let it run above 2%. Was the Fed blinded by the previous 20 years of global change that was deflationary and or you were not alert enough in 2020 to be more cautious about that
I like
change in
this guy.
policy?
I like this
So
guy a lot.
we were certainly mindful of a long period of time in which there have been very low interest rates, but also very low inflation, suggesting that the neutral interest rate must have fallen quite substantially. That was the standard view. The thing we didn't see coming was the pandemic. It's not like everything went off the rails. It's like we had this pandemic and it really changed the way the economy is working. We had a big crisis. We did a lot of things. So the concerns that led us to those concerns that we were in a world of very low interest rates all the time.
But now wouldn't you say we're in a very opposite situation where because of reshoring and tariffs and other policies that are quite inflationary?
I would say this, those concerns are, right now we have the policy rate in the mid fives, right? And we see the policy is restrictive, but clearly interest rates, the neutral interest rate must have moved up, at least in the short term. So I think that's the question we'll be asking ourselves in our review, which begins at the end of this year.
We look forward to that.
How much of what we did in that time period is relevant to the new world where rates appear to be higher?
Gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome, Chair Powell. It's great seeing you. Last time I saw you, we had the gracious pleasure of you visiting with me in my office, and we discussed a great variety of things. Thank you for that visit. Now, Chair Powell, this year, the Fed tested 31 banks, up from 23 last year. Is that correct?
Okay, I actually want to hear this banking piece here. Market is coming back down to entries. Have my alerts up, so don't worry. We'll get alerted if the market comes back to entry. I'm really 530 right here, which is like you guys can see support forming here, massive wick rejection right here. We could just get a triple bottom before we continue, but my strategy says it's either going to come down to my fib levels or not. So keep in mind that triple bottom and just punch up from right there at 25.30. That's very possible. If it does do that, I don't care. I'm just going to let it go, okay?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, I wanted to get those figures out and provide you with, you may have heard this, but I want to share it with the nation because your vice chair, Barr, made this statement, and I wanted to put this in the record, his exact quote from this great achievement. He said, "Our goal of our stress test is to help ensure that we have enough capital to absorb losses in a highly stressful scenario. And this test shows that we do." I thought that was a great statement.
We do not. Okay, if you guys ever want to go down a rabbit hole, look up how much money the FDIC, the Federal Depository Insurance Commission has, or corporation, whatever the fuck it is. Look how much money they actually have, and then look at if 3 banks were to fail. And I'm not talking about Wells Fargo and Bank of America. If 3 regional banks failed, does the FDIC have enough money to cover them? And once you guys find that answer, come back and tell me what you find, if you really want to shit your pants.
Different things. There's the Basel III capital proposal, and then there's the stress tests. So
you guys know in that movie Big Short, when they asked Michael Burry how he found that the all the ratings agencies were corroborating that all of the assets were bullshit, and he just said, "I looked at the numbers." Yeah, I looked at the fucking numbers. Go look at the FDIC's balance sheet and then see if they could afford one little mishap in the banking system. when they say that the banking system is resilient, what they're saying is we can print an unlimited amount of money. So no matter what happens, don't worry about it. We'll just print it. That's what they mean. Not that the banking system is actually resilient because they're all holding shit assets. Not that the FDIC has enough in the bank to really take care of any potential downturns, but it's because the Treasury and the Fed cooperating together will solve just about any problem through money printing.
You and I worked that up where we came up with the hardest hit program to help those who were suffering with, those states that were suffering with high unemployment and at the same time, high home foreclosures. And we were successful. And we've established that program and it's still going on and helping many of our states. But, you know, I want to also share what is happening around the world as a result of our activities. The European Union is now set to delay key parts of its bank capital rules by more than a year so that their lenders will not be at a disadvantage. Over in Canada, it's important to know that their banking regulators have also delayed for another year, imposing high capital rules on countries' banks at the risk of making them uncompetitive. And the Swiss National Bank is highly unlikely now to adopt a proposed 15% capital requirement for UPS and other Swiss banks. And the Bank of England has issued a near final proposal to increase UK bank capital by 3%. And I think this is all a measure of your great work and that of your vice chair. And I just wanted to let you have a comment on that, please.
Sure. So we're committed to finalizing this proposal. Our banks are going to live with these rules for a long, long time. The main thing is to get it right. And that's what we're doing. What we do in the end will be consistent with the Basel agreement, and it will also be consistent with what other comparable large jurisdictions are doing.
If I can, not that it's my fucking job or I'm in any position to give advice to the Fed, but look, this is what the military does. They run something called Monte Carlo situations where you'll put in different variables and just run thousands of different simulations with these variables to see what the outcome would be in different scenarios. Monte Carlo situations can be used for the banking system, and I think that they should just run those in every possible, if inflation is higher than expected over the last 10, or if inflation is lower than expected, if growth actually meets that, we have the AI revolution and boom, and GDP starts to pick up, let's do that scenario. Let's do a scenario where none of that happens. China steals all of our IP, and then we don't perform as well in GDP as we would hope. Let's see if biotech and some of these emerging industries and crypto become new sectors of the S&P 500. Let's run a scenario where shit's going well. Let's run 1,000 scenarios where it's not. Let's run 1,000 scenarios where it's in the middle, right? And you don't have to run 1,000. The Monte Carlo, you can create a simulator that will have the inputs, and you can essentially keep feeding it. Now, there's a lot of political stuff in the back. There's also a lot of social ramifications because the Basel agreements was good because after 2008, we realized we can't trust banks for shit. And so they had to put these restrictions on banks to force them to have money with the Fed, like the capital requirements, to put money aside so they can actually pay people back if they want their money. That was good. Now, after 15 years, those have become a little outdated to become very restricting for banks and have started to limit the amount of economic activity there is because banks just don't want to lend because they have to pay too much to get the money out the Fed, et cetera, et cetera. So they're trying to fix this without creating problems that in 10 years we didn't see. Make sense?
Changes in the light of the way they play off against the quantitative impact survey, and should have a reasonable time to comment on those. In addition, we're focused on one big area, but there are institutions that have made comments all across the spectrum, and we're reading all of those carefully.
Yo, Deer Park with the free plug on C-SPAN TV? Crazy.
Forward on. So That's it.
That's a free promo, y'all. This ad slot right here for Jake Paul and Nate Diaz would have been $1.4 million just to have that Deer Park logo there. All right, this is the stuff I pay attention to. Just side note. This is the Federal Reserve Chairman. Everybody and their mom is watching this.
Standpoint, it seems to make sense. And
Sorry, all decision makers and key institutions and their mom are watching this.
to spending, increased taxes, limits on domestic energy production, in principle, are a cause for higher costs for business, contributes to inflation, and as well tightens the labor markets, kind of running contrary to your two mandates.
You know, you're asking me a kind of a political question there. I don't want to criticize a platform policies that are not really ours to decide.
Really, it's more of an economic question, but I appreciate your answer, sir. So when you mentioned recalibrate policy yesterday in the Senate hearing, was part of your thinking taking a more holistic view of economic conditions?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there
Yo, I like this guy.
any data to support the so-called greedflation? This term greedflation somehow has caused inflation. Is there any data to support those comments?
So we look at it that this inflation has been caused by a combination of, very strong demand and constrained supply. So it was really a high-speed collision between an economy that was reopening. And by the way, there was inflation all over the world at the same time. So these are some common factors. But at the same time, you had tremendous demand, for example, for automobiles. You had constrained supply because there weren't enough semiconductors, long story short. But, so that to us is what this inflation is all about. So we've observed, the sort of healing of the supply side at the same time, restrictive monetary policies weighing on demand, and we've seen inflation coming down from
Right, so
those.
there's no data that supports that gouging of consumers is part of the inflation.
It's been very hard to track a connection with,
Okay.
earnings and things.
Secretary Yellen mentioned that she didn't feel that there was grocery price shock and that sort of thing. Groceries and gasoline are the two driving problems for American families and certainly my constituents. Do you believe your policies are helping to alleviate in those two areas?
So a lot of things affect, let's take energy first. The energy prices are generally set at the global level. We do have some effect on that.
Sorry,
not that
Chairman, I've run
much.
out of time. Thank you. I yield back, Mr.
Sorry,
Chair.
we can continue.
That's great, thanks.
The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being here. In some ways, I want to follow up or at least respond to,
Yo, Bryce, this your man's?
I think reason of why we need an independent.
Jensen, I can't see your video, but I know you just cracked a smile at that one. This is your man's too.
Was, the question you raised with.
Members, I jumped down to the 5. I found the lows right here. We got a low right here. We got a low right here. And now we're testing 88.886 from this 5-minute low. So I have TP1 and TP2 marked off. There is a scalp here potentially, but not for me. I'm not going to take it. Just I am being mindful of this because we have ran into this problem like probably 3-4 times already, where we're looking for the higher time frame kind of 30-minute zone, but it'll hit like 5-minute, 15-minute support, and that's where it'll launch from. So I am being mindful of potential push from here. Not going to take that position though. If it runs from here, then I'll let it go and wait for the reset.
Sessions because of no security. People that felt no security, particularly the business community, in making big investments because nobody was in control. Just kind of think that what went on just went on. Is that relevant?
Yes, I think the lack of a central bank between 1836 and the founding of the Fed was a period of lots and lots of depressions, and a lot of it had to do with the crop cycle and the banks not being able to handle the very large seasonal swings, and there was no central bank to provide liquidity. So that's really what gave rise to the founding of the Fed in the early part of the last century.
Do you think that it would be that it is dangerous to blend monetary policy and fiscal policy?
To blend them.
Yes.
So we try to keep them very separate.
No, they do not. That was a solid question.
Express views on fiscal policy. That's for elected people who have undergone elections and won and make those very difficult decisions. We have a really specific, narrow, but important mandate that we do that you've given us, and we try to stick to that. And so we take your policies as given.
Let me remind you guys that money printing is the act of the Treasury, so the government of the United States, inventing bonds out of thin air, the Fed printing money out of thin air in a database, and then they just switch with each other. That's a conflict of interest. That is what led to the inflation problem, and that was a solid question that Jay Powell just dodged.
Document, I read some of it online a couple of nights ago, but even whether it comes out of a 2025 or a 3089, whatever, the one of the things that I'm concerned about, reading this from this document.
Well, there's no such thing as spamming the chat. I want you guys to spam the shit out of the YouTube chats. Questions, comments, your observations, anything. Like this. That's what the discussion is for. Spam it.
Economic policy on the Fed that does not come from within the Fed. So I'm wondering here, would you agree with any of that I just stated, whether it came from me or Chairman McHenry or anybody else?
So I'll just say, first of all, we're certainly fair game for any criticism people have. I think what we've learned and what we know is that having an independent central bank is really essential. If you want to have high and volatile inflation, then the quickest road to that would be to undermine the independence of the central bank, of the Fed in our case. So I frankly think that view is very widely held. I find up here on Capitol Hill in both political parties.
So eliminating the Federal Reserve is best for promoting economic stability.
Yes.
Thank you. I knew that the ranking member was going to come in and deal with the issue of housing. She always does, and we all appreciate the fact that she's obsessed with it, and I like that obsession. But
We've seen that rejection here already. So that would be the target if it does pop off, which is about 40 points away. But anything we've learned over the past few weeks is that even these like smaller time frame scalp trades, I'd rather miss the trade than chase it. Long story short, because yesterday I chased it. It was too high. Instead of waiting for the lower entries, I was like, oh, let me take the higher one. And then obviously it shot down, took another trade, hit SL, and then shot back up. And the only real lesson was just wait for the better entries. And so regardless of what happens here, I'm going to be waiting for that lower entry. And that's how I'm playing this. Solid trades only. Winners only.
You said to my colleague, Mr. Musi, there will be, you're not reproposing some things. It's just going to be a partial reproposal.
That's what we're looking at doing is major thing. Someone asked me, does it sound like the first quarter of next year might be? And I said, it might be. I mean, there's a range of times it would take. The thing is, as I mentioned, U.S. banks are going to be living with these rules for many years. The point of it is to get it right, not to do it quickly. We want to get it right, listen to the comments, make sound decisions, and move ahead in a way that is, gives us a sustainable set of rules that we don't have to come back and fix all the mistakes in.
Thank you. I want to move on to another topic, long-term debt. You mentioned yesterday that you would most likely not move forward with other rules until people reach a place of understanding and acceptance of a revised Basel proposal. I hope that's the truth, as banks need to fully understand the implications of a Basel proposal before any action is taken on long-term debt. Finally, Chair Powell, I'd like to emphasize the need for the Fed to conduct a comprehensive, data-driven, and most importantly, transparent assessment of the current liquidity framework. So very quick.
Patience pays. Let's see how this goes.
A public quantitative impact study and a full notice and comment rulemaking before imposing any new liquidity requirements.
I didn't catch the first part of that. The first part of your ask.
Will you commit to conducting a public quantitative impact study and a full notice and comment rulemaking before imposing any new liquidity?
On the liquidity thing, I'm not exactly sure what we're contemplating there. We certainly contemplate getting a full range of input from the public on that because some of these are novel ideas and we understand that.
All right, as the chairman said before, these impact studies are very important because they're to show what impact these rules will have. So I think that is very important that we have that because we had a mucked up process with Basel 2.0 and I don't think we don't want to repeat that. And I have a little time left. I'm going to yield to my colleague from Pennsylvania, Mr. Music, because I know he had another question. I thank my colleague, Chairman Powell, just back to what we were talking about, the price instability of groceries and gasoline, where we do have somewhat of an affordability crisis has been termed. So would lowering rates in the near future be a pro-growth initiative perhaps? Is that something that's being considered that would actually drive investment and give a clearer picture for investment and perhaps help in these two categories and in the end, increase in supply so as we lower those prices?
Honestly, when we think about our near-term rate moves, we're thinking about a couple things. And the first of which is we want to be more confident about inflation.
My apologies, Chairman, I went over.
Sorry.
Chairman, I yield back to my colleague.
The gentleman from California,
Again?
Mr. Vargas, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again for this hearing and the ranking member. Thank you very much. Chairman Powell, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. In fact, I was looking at your
Tester entry one's coming in.
out here and all that. In fact, you had public service even prior to that time, right?
That's right.
So I thank you for your long public service to the nation. I think.
Thank you.
All right. Let me just put in this entry real quick. Let's see the prices. If you guys are new on the stream, you'll see the prices aren't moving. It's just because I paused my screen share for 1 second. I take this trade. And resume share.
And that's because the economy is doing all right. Am I wrong about that?
You know, take a look at our economy. We're growing at around 2%. It feels like inflation is down to 2.6%. Unemployment's at 4.1. These are good numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I hear the parade of horribles on the other side, how the sky's falling, but I don't see the media here to attest to that. In fact, it's just the opposite. Did you read some of the headlines of the new government in Britain? Some of the headlines? If not, let me read one. It says, new British government inherits worst economic plight since World War II. And in fact, there's a number of headlines like that saying that England's in trouble. I imagine if you were running their central bank, I bet you there'd be a whole bunch of media here beating you up to find out, what the hell you're doing or what you aren't doing. And I think the reason for that, again, is I think the government here has done a pretty darn good job. One of the things you said you didn't see coming was the pandemic, right? And I'm not putting words in your mouth.
Right.
In fact, I was here and I heard the parade of horribles that we were going to have a recession, maybe a depression. In fact, the country was going to fall apart. Did it?
No, we went through a period of high inflation as the other countries did. And that's very challenging.
And in fact, isn't it the case that most of those countries had higher inflation than we did in Europe?
Over time, there were times when their inflation was higher. I think overall it was broadly comparable.
Yeah, in fact, I brought it up a number of times here because there was a whole bunch of those countries that had much higher inflation than we did.
Well, Europe was much harder hit with the energy issues coming out of the Ukraine war than we were.
Sure. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other issues to instability. They had political instability, a whole bunch of other things, obviously. But I mean, it is interesting today that, the parade of horribles that we hear doesn't seem to manifest itself with the media or the attention that you normally get. And that's good. I mean, I think it's a great thing. Now, I do want to ask a couple questions. I do have concerns, Basel III on housing. I think I've made those concerns known to your office and I won't rehash them. But I do have issues that I want to talk to you about with regard to climate. Obviously, you said you don't read too much of the news. You didn't hear about Project 25. I don't think that's what you meant to say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think when the ranking member asked you if
he just did that twice. He's like, "You said this." I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think you said this.
read it.
I've seen nothing more than headlines on it. I mean, I've devoted zero
Yeah, me too. I don't
Zero
read
energy
that.
into,
Yeah, I don't read that wacky stuff myself either, but I certainly read the headline. But the reason I ask about the headlines is that you obviously have seen what has happened in Texas. You've seen
Vargas.
what's happened with climate change. And in fact, you've testified, I think, before that you believe in climate change. Is that correct?
sure.
Yeah. And so what are we doing? You've taken a number of steps, I think, that have been very positive to make sure that we look at the risks of climate change. Could you go over some of those? Because that does concern me. I think that's a change that
I hope he says the Fed this is not the Fed's job.
I believe.
So, if you're looking at financial regulators, you're looking at people who have a very, very limited role in climate, and that is just to look at the institutions that we supervise and make sure that they understand and can manage the risks that they're running. That we are not climate policymakers.
Right. And I'm not asking
Has to
that.
be elected people who do that.
Right, but you have to take a look at the risk. I mean, look at the risks that the insurance companies are taking. And the banks, of course, are financing these homes, and now you can't get insurance on them. So all of a sudden you can't rebuild. I mean, these are risks that the banks are looking
So
at.
we don't regulate insurance companies.
No, right, but you regulate the banks.
Thanks, yeah.
And these banks have mortgages on those houses, do they not?
Oh,
Many of them.
Well,
Got
in many
'em.
cases, they're not writing mortgages anymore. So that's the result we're getting is that banks are saying, they see these risks. They
Thank
do.
you. My time's up, but thank you again. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
The gentlelady from California, Mrs. Kim, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Powell, thank you for being with us today. Gosh, you're under a lot of pressure from all sides to divert from our monetary policy goals. And I commend you for your leadership and staying focused on the core missions.
Can somebody help me out here? Who is this? Who's Mrs. Kim? What state is she representing?
Leadership. And you have stated that it is the Fed's
If it's California, I'm gonna end the stream. Help me out here.
and again, and I really urge FDIC and OCC moving forward with reopening the comp.
Ryan said, "What does this meeting end, brother?" It's a while. All right. So you guys can hop in and off, but I'm gonna let you know right now. I'm gonna be on here until I don't want to say until the very end of this hearing, but I'm gonna try to stick around. If Jerome Powell at his age and with all his pressure, if he can stick around here long enough, I'll see what I can do.
Broad support mean abandon.
I'll be closing the full trade once it hits TP1, by the way, but you guys can choose to close a few contracts, hold the rest till TP2, but I'll be closing the trade and just bagging in my money for today.
Empirically would mean, a good solid vote on the Fed board. And I've tried not to be specific about what that means, but it also means broad support among the broader community of commenters on all sides. That's what I meant by broad support. Yeah, that's what I meant by it.
Thank you. And as the Fed looks to enacting several changes to the proposal, I would also urge you not to overlook how the Basel and endgame proposal would disproportionately impact FBOs and regional banks and US domestic jobs because of the way the outside operational risk is, weighted. So can we?
Ray, are you being serious? Is it actually California? Bro, say swear.
Well aware of those concerns. We've obviously carefully digested all of the comments we've gotten from all different sectors, and those are concerns that we're well aware of.
Thank you. Let's switch gear.
Yo, members, who took this trade? If you took the trade, everybody shout out your entries in the chats, YouTube and Zoom.
Conversations at the Fed to have more transparency and better engagement and consistency with stress tests.
So we have increased transparency in the stress tests over time. And I would say, we do, if people want to write articles and make comments that are critical of the stress test, we're going to read those and we're going to think about that. We're open to improving it. We know that the stress test has to evolve over time if it's to remain relevant. And I think
we got 708, 704 on Apex. Awesome stuff. Hasna said 498 on what platform?
And adapted.
Also, good morning, Hasna. Good to see you on here. We got the full squad on here. Good morning, Roman, Bobby. We got Alan, George, Bobby, Chris, Christine, Daryl. We got DT in the house. Big Jensen already caught a few jabs early with the Missouri. No, that the guy from Missouri was representing y'all well. He was asking the tough questions. Max is on here. Big Max. We got Miled, Noah, and Walter. Good morning, Walter.
To the liquidity framework.
8 cap.
So
Okay.
we haven't actually made any proposals on that yet.
13.
We have had significant industry interaction on the proposals, and I mean,
That's basically TP1 hit, yo. So make your choices. You close in partials, you close in full, or you accepting the risk holding full, you protecting the trade. Obviously, you should have made the choice in advance, but you got, you know, it's at the level now. So make a choice or forever hold your peace. I'm gonna pause the screen share real quick so I can close out this trade.
on them, and it's a pretty early stage.
Thank you. Let me quickly talk about the inflation issue. We had a peak inflation rate of 9.1% in June 2022, and a lot has been talked about being a supply side issue and the demand shock from the opening economy. So can you elaborate how the expansion in the money supply and
Look at the accuracy between entry and target, and they'll still say, "Oh, it's just luck. Oh, it's just it." Bro, every day. This is the kind of trade I love. 11-11, perfect TP at 11-11. What is happening right now? This day started off so weird, and it's let me tell you all right now, it's kind of picking up. Not as disappointed in the questions today, except for Maxine Waters, who should really retire with Pelosi and Schumer and the rest of the fucking zombie gang, right? But besides that, it's a pretty good day. We got great questions, great energy in the chats. Appreciate y'all hopping on today, man. This day starting to turn up a little bit.
The Fed has been working on with restrictive policy on cooling demand. That has been
Now, another question I have, put a 1 if you guys closed out full. Put this in the Zoom. 1 if you closed out full, 2 if you closed out partials, 3 if you're holding.
adjusted for.
Delays
1 if you closed full, 2 if you closed partials, 3 if you're holding.
from Georgia, Mrs. Williams is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman McHenry, and thank you, Chair Powell, for joining us today. As the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, Raphael Bostic has so rightly pointed out that combating economic inequality is a critical part of the Fed's dual mandate.
Respecting that TP1 like a new recruit in the military talking to you know what I'm saying? Talking to a superior in their chain. I'm talking respect like, you know what I'm saying?
Other city in the country, but is still among our nation's leaders in the racial wealth gap.
Watch it wick back under that zone.
Reserve for the work that you're doing to make sure that the economy works as well for the
Jensen, I'd be feeling spicy too if I already requested an $18,000 payout. I'd be holding that trade too. Let's just see what happens.
financial services are affordable and accessible to everyone. As the Fed moves forward with the proposed changes to Regulation 2, I know that protecting access to affordable and accessible banking is at the top of your mind. That is why I was concerned when I started receiving outreach.
Camille, this is the practice you need. This is an exercise in patience. Okay, so you have to practice patience all day in every opportunity that you get. And so if we can sit through this whole testimony and we can sit through all of this, we can definitely sit through a trade. We can definitely have the patience to wait for an entry. And it all blends together, right? How you do something is how you do everything. So this is a live experiential practice.
Community-based organizations to offer low or no-cost bank accounts to unbanked and underbanked individuals. Access and affordability are at the heart of the changes that you're proposing, and I couldn't agree more with those goals. But we have to make.
Ain't I just say watch it wick back under the zone? People, no, you can't predict market. No, you can't predict market. Sorry, all right. I digress. But what are we doing here?
My colleague across the aisle, Mr. Lukemeyer, and I sent a bipartisan comment letter in March to you highlighting those very concerns and urging that the final rule not negatively impact low and moderate income communities. Chair Powell, how does the Fed take into account how regulations impact constituents who don't have an attorney or an interest group to submit a comment on their behalf?
Well, let me say first, we have heard those concerns that you raised and others have raised about aspects of the proposed rule. And, you know, we very much understand the concerns that are being raised. In terms of people where we don't have comment letters, you know, I mean, we try to be thoughtful about the impact of our regulations, but principally we're looking for public comment on things.
Thank you. The FDIC's most recent data shows that the rate of unbanked households is at an all-time low. The bank-owned initiative has certainly played an important role in this progress. Bank-owned certified accounts are available to more than 95% of low and moderate income households across all 50 states. Access to low or no-cost banking services is a door to financial inclusion and wealth generation for marginalized families. As written, Reg 2 could undo some of the enormous progress made in the past several years. Chair Powell, how can regulators work with members of this committee to ensure that future proposed rules do not hinder Americans' access to tools that enhance the Federal Reserve's financial inclusion efforts?
So we're very focused on things like bank on, as you pointed out, and on you know, access to the financial system for marginalized communities. So we wouldn't want to do anything to weigh on that. We were happy to work with you in your office on those issues. But so, you know, as I mentioned, we're hearing the comments and we're reading them, and we're taking those into account as we think about appropriate changes to the proposal.
So we will definitely follow up on that, because as we're writing these regulations, I want to make sure that we're thinking about the real world impact and what it means to consumers when they're accessing financial institutions. I look forward to working with you to further the Fed's financial inclusion efforts. Like earlier this week, I sent you another bipartisan letter related to the Federal Reserve's April proposal to extend the operating hours of FedWire Fund service to 22 hours per day, 7 days per week, and every day of the year. That was news that I was eager to hear. This may sound like a small technical change, but it can have a big impact on our constituents, especially for those living in.
Okay, not gonna lie, probably the best thing I've heard all day. Shout out to you, Miss Williams. Extending the Fed wire, like the Fed is using an internal transfer system that's so slow and that takes so many days, and it has so many days off, and they close early and all this shit. It's 2024. If I can send $500 billion of XRP anywhere in the world instantaneously, the Fed should be able to keep the Fed wire system open 24/7. Let's be completely honest. But of course, the government uses archaic systems because they're less likely to get hacked. And shout out to Miss Williams, because let's at least get let's get the money moving. Like,
marginalized communities who live paycheck to paycheck. Growing up in the booming metropolis of Smith Station, Alabama, probably never heard of it, Chair Powell. But there are limited options for loans and short-term loans. In an area where everyone needs a car to get to work and they have to work to eat, when money is short, any delay in accessing a paycheck or paying a bill can disrupt your entire household. Extending operating hours for FedWire Fund service and National Settlement Service will allow people continual access to their funds outside of what we've deemed normal operating hours. And I hear the gavel. I'm out of time, but we will be following up for more conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
she had that whole thing, not practiced, but she had definitely practiced that one. Okay. And you could tell other folks just like had their staff write it and they're just in there reading it in real time. Yeah, shout out to those questions.
Used to linger above the 2% target rate set by the Federal Reserve. In fact, the PCE inflation index has remained above 2% for the last 3 years. The Federal Open Market Committee's statement on longer run goals and monetary policy strategy issued at the beginning of the year stated, and I quote, "The committee seeks to achieve inflation that averages 2% over time and therefore judges that following periods when inflation has been running persistently below 2%, appropriate monetary policy will likely aim to achieve inflation moderately above 2% for some time," end quote. Chairman Powell, does the commitment to achieve a 2% average over time apply in the other direction as well? Meaning that if inflation remains above 2% for a protracted period, would the committee instead aim for inflation moderately below 2% for some time in order to achieve an inflation average of 2%?
No, it doesn't.
Is it fair to say that you would need to see the PCE index dip below 2% at least once in the coming months in order to contemplate a rate cut?
No, that's not fair to say. We've said that you don't want to wait until inflation gets all the way down to 2%. Because inflation has a certain momentum. You wouldn't wait that long. If you waited that long, you probably waited too long, because inflation will be moving downward and will go well below 2%, which we don't want.
What combination factors would you need to see in order to support a rate cut this month or in September?
So I'm once again, I'll say I'm not sending any signals on any particular date of any meeting whatsoever on policy. I said that yesterday, and I'm saying it again today, but I will answer your question. So what we said is that we want to be more confident. We want to have greater confidence, and that means more good inflation readings. That inflation is moving sustainably down to 2%. Greater confidence that that is the case. But remember, we have a dual mandate too. We're not just an inflation targeting central bank. We also have an employment mandate. So I could also see us cutting, and we've said this, I've said this, if we saw unexpected weakening in the labor market. And we do now see, I'll say, speak for myself, I now see the risks to the two mandates as much closer to being in balance. I think for a long time, we've had to focus heavily on the inflation mandate, but I think now we're getting to the place where you know, the labor market is getting pretty much in balance to where it needs to be. And so we're looking at both sides.
I know that the media and others have continued to talk about the prospect of political interference with the Federal Reserve. With an election coming up, I know you are very aware of the heightened scrutiny awaiting the open market committee meetings in July and September. Can you use this opportunity to speak regarding the Federal Reserve's political independence going into this election?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So, you know, our political independence is critical to our ability to do our jobs and to sustain the faith of people across the political spectrum. And it comes down to, we make our decisions based on economic data, evolving outlook.
All right. Just in case some of you guys have to hop away and then come back, let me at least go through the predictions for CPI tomorrow. I am thinking that we're going to come out at 0.2 or 0.3. So it's going to come out a little hot. And in case you guys don't know what that means, we're supposed to be moving down with inflation. All right. And every print that we get where the month over month number is still coming out at 0.1 or 0.2, as long as it's a positive number, that means the rate of growth for inflation, like it's still growing. It's still going to be harder for the Fed to rein it back in, which is why I'm big on potential recession Q4, Q5, or Q4, Q1 2025. Because I think the only way to get inflation down meaningfully is through a recession. And I think instead of the Fed stepping in and stopping a recession, I think they'll allow a little bit of air to come out of the bubble before stepping in meaningfully. Okay, so I think CPI number comes out as expected, maybe a little bit hotter. Regardless, I'm bullish on stocks. The market has already set the expectations that inflation's not going to come down right away and that the last mile is always the hardest. And I think that the market has already set the expectations of a long-term, this is going to take a while. The interest rate thing was where markets were going to panic the most, which is when they finally realized that we're not going to get a rate cut this year, that's when we're going to see stocks crash. But Jerome Powell made it clear in every single Fed meeting so far that we ain't getting a rate cut, maybe one. And I think the market has already set its expectations. So regardless of what the economic situation is, as long as the markets have set their expectations in advance, it's going to keep growing. And we're going to keep seeing bullish momentum.
For both PCE inflation and CPI inflation of 4 to 2%, or only one of those metrics?
So we look at different measures, but for
what is the exact time the meeting is over? Who fucking cares? Why the fuck are you, what the fuck does that matter?
We think it's the better.
Better get your head in the right, get back on focus, man.
And you know, you've said that you're willing to cut interest rates before reaching the 2% target. Is the decision to cut interest rates going to be driven by reaching a particular target en route to 2%, or is it driven by the overall trajectory of the inflation rate?
It's going to be driven by the totality of the data. There isn't a particular.
The link for the masterclass is chartaddictsfx.com. And then you guys can go to this tab here that says live classes. So this is where you'll be able to, you can secure your seat for the intro webinar, and then you can also just register for the masterclass directly. So if you guys want more information, we're doing a free webinar tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. You guys can come by, ask questions, learn more about how this strategy is going to change your life. And then if you're just ready to register, you guys have seen enough. You've been looking at the trades that we're taking, and you just realized the sooner you get on a strategy that works, the sooner you're going to build momentum, the sooner you're going to build competence and confidence with that strategy. Don't waste more time. Hop on over, masterclass. Let's get to it.
Rather than a mere revision, do you believe that the U.S. banking system?
Said notes taken for CPI. Walter, I'm glad you were paying attention. Everyone else tomorrow is going to be like, wait, I thought that it was gonna, and then I'm gonna pull up the receipts from this meeting right now and say, remember yesterday when I told you that the number is going to come out exactly as expected, or maybe 0.1% higher, and that regardless, as long as the market set its expectations, we're gonna be bullish, and we're gonna see a Model 3 tomorrow probably, guys. So bullish with an exception. There's an asterisk next to bullish. Trade is running. Who's still in NASDAQ? Put a 1 if you're still in this trade.
Consistent with Basel, and I think that's what our banks want, that's what we want, and that will be best serving the public.
But you agree we should conform without gold plating?
Some things we gold plate.
C4, it doesn't matter which one's better. Use both. All right. This whole trying to figure out the perfect move and trying to figure out the best place, you can't. You got to diversify. You don't know if anyone's going to go out of business. You don't know if anyone's going to get hit with regulations. You gotta make that choice for yourself, And so I would just say both. Apex has been paying out, and so I'll give a shout out to them. But having worked with both companies kind of behind the scenes, for the summit, I would say I like the way that Top Step has been working. 14 years in the game, guys. That's a long fucking time. That's basically the 08 financial crisis. That's a company that you want to, for the long term, kind of keep your eye on. But Apex is paying out. They have great promotions all the time. And so I don't know why you wouldn't entertain both.
Would you agree that an act of Congress would supersede those recommendations?
Sure.
Does the loss
This
Chevron
trade is, bro, this trade is running like it stole something. This trade is running like Donald Trump for president in 2016. This shit is going crazy. This shit might just beat Usain Bolt's record. This thing is, people, that's not, okay, that last one was kind of funny. Tyreek Hill. This thing is running like a sibling that smacked another sibling and then now has to deal with the consequences. Okay? This is crazy.
When it comes to what should be the size of the Fed's balance sheet?
Well, we have
the trade hit a 1.6 to 1 R. If you're going to hold to full TP, which is kind of nuts. If you hit till full TP, you're looking at a solid 2 to 1, maybe 2.1 to 1 if it wicks above. So you risk $1,000, you're going to make 2,000.
Reserves, ample
Not
reserves
too
is
bad.
the right place to be, and we'll find that empirically.
Can you put a number on that?
No, I can't really.
For 4 decades, we've had the best of.
Let me say, who turned the ads on? I did. You think I'm gonna run the Jerome Powell stream with no ads? Are you crazy? Yeah, all types of random people pulling up. You gotta want to be here. I'm gonna just put it that way. For this stream, you gotta at least want to be here. He said for free? No, I would do it we do it for free every day. This is stream number 270 or something. 270. At least an hour each stream. It's 270 hours, right? So, hey, why are you so funny? I'm being dead serious. No, actually, the stream is lagging by 20 seconds. You're probably still laughing at the Tyreek Hill joke. I'll let the laughter die down, and then let me know when you guys are all caught up.
Working with this body on both sides of the aisle, I chalk some of that up to the fact that you've got some very good folks from Iowa on your staff there, helping keep the trains running on time. So that's it.
He said, "Now I'm laughing at you. Look, as long as you laughing at me, laughing with me, laughing for me, as long as you're laughing, I'm happy. Okay."
Just in the last 3 years, I've got 6 kids. We're the #1 egg producing state in the country, but yet eggs for each one of my kids goes up 40% this past year. And take that times 6. I'm no economist, but that adds up real quick. And I think I'm reflective of a lot of families across the country right now. So, Mr. Chair, one of the things I'd like to talk about is, what we are focused on and what your department's working on at the Fed. The U.S. Federal Reserve, in my opinion, should be more focused on folks like my hometown of Bondurant, Iowa, versus what's coming out of unelected bureaucrats in Brussels, Belgium, for example.
He said, no way, ain't shit free, da. Look, I don't like any of that talk, bro. There's a lot of shit that's free. We do service out here, man. We really doing it for the people out here, man. I just turned the ads off. I don't give a fuck about the ads. But if you guys stick around for the next 10 minutes, I am going to summarize kind of the main points that we touched on during this testimony. I'll be real. We got about 5 or 6 gems out of this one. And it seems like the whole topic is on this Basel III and the banking regulation changes. This is going to be one of the most complicated topics, and there's going to be so much BS out there. So rest assured, right? Rest assured, your boy here at Chart Addicts is going to do that research for us. I'm going to figure out exactly what those changes are, whether they affect us at all in any way, shape, or form. Probably not, right? And then, well, there's going to be 2 or 3 big things. But what I'm going to try to focus on is how we can take advantage. 1, as traders, and 2, as competent citizens. Whenever they launch a program, like let's say they're going to reduce the capital requirements on all the biggest banks. That translates in English to they're about to let the banks have all their money back. They don't have to keep holding it at the Fed, holding it hostage. And the banks are never going to let cash sit around. They're going to dump it into the market, whether it's in terms of whether it's lending, whether it's buying back stock, whether it's equity, whether it's real estate and packaging real estate deals, wherever that money is going to end up. If you're just in the vicinity, you're going to hit by the splash. This is how wealth gets created. This is how I basically outline my life. I look at the potential trends with big money flowing in, the sources of money. And then where's it all going to get dumped into when it finally moves? Okay, let me go there first before everybody else finds out. That's why I'm so heavy on crypto, right? I'm sitting here by myself with an umbrella, right? With an umbrella, just waiting for fucking Free Willy. You understand? So that's why it's important to keep an eye on big banking regulations and interest rate changes, not to be like the best economist. It's like, where is the money going to go? I want crumbs from this big, like they're going to have a feast. Oh, we needed some crumbs to make millions, potentially billions, right? So keep an eye on the ball. That's what we're going to be focused on.
With assets under $7 billion. His commitment or his comments are of great concern on this consolidation. Do you share?
NASDAQ just smashed TP2. Yo, son. No matter how, let me just tell you guys one thing. No matter how long you've been trading, and no matter how in control you are, that feeling, oh, I really should have held today. That doesn't go away, right? Now, the longer that you're in the game, you immediately identify that thought, right? You become instantly aware of it. And through conscious awareness of these pre-existing thought patterns, you can kind of just, beat them, right? Just conscious awareness. That's how you beat all these mental loops. So it came up. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, the feeling to myself, damn, if there was ever a day to have held the trade and listened to Jensen, it might have been today. But immediately, my rational brain says, clearly, I made the choice to take TP1 for a reason because I've been holding too long and paying the consequences. And so that's called growth. No more early entries, no more overstaying my welcome. And then guess what? I'm right back to form, cashing in 15, 30-minute trades with fucking, with no time to spare. And then, yeah, I mean, I get some satisfaction watching it run, even if I'm not in this, Being right also has its little fucking, also has its benefits. Hasna says, we up. Y'all better be taking partial profits, stop fucking around. Max said, I missed this trade, need to go off the screen before making a stupid decision. Max, you've had 2 incredible calls this week, right? Saw them both, posted them up because the charts were beautiful. So, fam, look, you got it. You feel me? I lost money a few days in a row, and so some days you're the pigeon, some days you're the statue. Count your fucking, count your blessings. Keep it moving.
Really, we're just studying them now.
Thank you, Chairman Powell. Thank you, Chair. And I hope you continue to self-police. It's much appreciated to you and your.
We'll now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, my friend, Mr. Nickel, for 5 minutes.
By the way, it's not how Noah Camille made a bunch of money. He's just saying random cryptos right now. He said shmoney, XDC, XLM, XRP, but he's just up on a trade right now. saying anything that has to remotely do with money. Okay, everybody, I'm going to hop off here. Let's go ahead and just do a quick recap of what happened here on this in this testimony. So there were really three main concerns. Number one is obviously the Basel banking regulations. That's we're going to cover. Number two was around the Fed's outlook on past the election. This is like one thing I found interesting. It's like the conversation of, are we going to get rate cuts this year? Nobody's really asking that. I mean, a few people still are, but we're past it. It's like, okay, what does 2025 and 2026 look like? Powell's not that optimistic. And the reason he's not optimistic is because it's all going to fall apart once he leaves. So unless, how do I say this? Yeah, he's basically setting the stage. Right? That's basically what I'll say. So first Basel, two post-election, and then three. Hold on, I just got it. Oh, and then three. So I just saw the text. Oh, we're good. Here we go. Well, here's the single most, before you guys leave, single most important thing that Jerome Powell said. This is going to be the most consequential for traders, investors, and most importantly, this is going to be the most important news of the day for entrepreneurs, investors, crypto, everybody. Jerome Powell said, make sure to head over to fxsummit2024.com and grab your early bird tickets to the FX Summit 2024 conference in Dubai. Tickets are discounted mad right now. Make sure you guys take advantage of that. Also, I'll give you guys a little slight thing since you made it to the very end of the stream. If you use promo code CHARTADDICT, you get an additional 50% off the elite and general admission tickets. So just throwing that out there. Shout out to Jerome Powell for that one. Happy and safe trading, everybody. Ray says, you're Royer the GOAT alongside with Messi. Ray, I've been saying this since day one. I'm not the GOAT. I might fit the description, though. All right. Happy and safe trading. Take it easy. Peace.